good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for our today's webinar about our Arctic ocean expeditions. Thank you very much that you have found time to be with us today. Yeah, it is a great opportunity here to join in and learn a little bit about our North Atlantic crossing from Vlissingen via Aberdeen with Hondius, and from Vlissingen via Bremerhaven in Germany with Jansonius. For 2022, we're talking about our departures in May 2022. Now, we have already launched webinars on various destinations, for instance, Antarctica, Norway, Spitsbergen, Falkland Islands, South Georgia, Greenland, the Ross Sea, the Weddell Sea. And today we are talking about our first trip in the Arctic, which is a very exciting voyage. We shed some light on this because really there's a story to tell. My name is Florian Piper. I'm directing the sales of our Arctic program, and today I would like to introduce you to our guest and keynote speaker, Andreas Alexander, who is based in Oslo, in Norway.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Hi, Andreas. Nice to meet you. A few words about you, Andreas. Your studies in mechanical and engineering and geology, they brought you to the far north, so to say. Your research took you to Sweden, to Alaska, finally to Spitsbergen, where you ended up for a few years. You lived up there, you enjoyed your life, you did your studies, and you have fallen in love with glaciers. We hear a little bit more about that in a minute. Today, you're in your final stage of your PhD in glaciology at the University of Oslo and in Spitsbergen.
Yes.
That's great. And in addition to your scientific work, you can also be found on our ships as expedition guide on board our fleet in Svalbard, in Greenland, and in Antarctica. You were on board the maiden voyage with Hondius in June 2019, which is great because you brought pictures and you have the story to tell. And today you will share your North Atlantic experience with us, our audience from across Europe. Now, I'll have a little introduction about our company. You know us, Oceanwide Expeditions. We are based in Vlissingen in the Netherlands. We are owner and operator of a fleet of vessels, motor vessels and sailing ships. We have a little history as well. Our company started about 25 years ago in the mid-90s. Here you go. You see it on the time scale a little bit about us. I won't go into deep detail here, but you see along this line that we have introduced our motor vessels in 2009, Plancius, 2012, Ortelius, and later in 2016 we purchased MV Hondius. She got launched in 2019. On that maiden voyage across the North Atlantic. We will be talking about the North Atlantic today. We have a new ship also lining up. Jansonius had just been launched recently. You may have seen it in the news, which is very exciting. So the vessel is in her final stage of getting ready to be delivered to us later in autumn, early winter. And then we will be starting up with her for the first time in Antarctica. That is the Antarctic program ahead of us, 2021, 22. A little bit about our routes. We are going south, we are going north. We are only operating in the polar waters and the cold waters. First, I'll take you south to Antarctica. So you see at one glance where we operate in broader terms. You see Antarctica now here in front of you. We operate along the Antarctic Peninsula and the Ross Sea in the time between November till March. The Antarctic Peninsula, the northern tip of the Antarctic spine, is of course very interesting for most of the travelers, because these trips are the shortest voyages that we have on offer: 10-nighters, 11-nighters, or even 12-nighters when you cross the Antarctic Circle with us. The Southern Circle, and we also go and head and operate over in the northeast side of the Antarctic tip. That is the Weddell Sea, with our ship Ortelius. Ortelius is carrying 2 helicopters on the aft deck, which is quite handy because those helicopters come into swing on this side of Antarctica when we want to reach out to Snow Hill Island to visit the emperor penguin colony, and we can only go there by helicopter in order to overcome ice barriers where we cannot land with Zodiac boats anymore. So it's expanding our operational realm, so to say. Now, from the Antarctic Peninsula, we also go far deep into the Antarctic continent. We offer half circumnavigations of Antarctica, starting in Ushuaia, and then we are heading across over to the Antarctic Peninsula and to the Ross Sea. You see it here circled on the map, the Ross Sea. Here we see and visit research stations like McMurdo and the historic stations of Shackleton and Scott. The Ross Sea voyage ends in New Zealand, and that is the end of the one-way ticket, a 31-night voyage going one way from Ushuaia to the New Zealand. And we do the same voyage in reverse as well. So it's a very popular trip if you really want to see the faraway places where normally only scientists can travel to. Now, this is for Antarctica. That is for the summer season down south, November till March. And then we change map. We are heading north now to the Arctic. That is the second half of our year, where we take our ships up north to Svalbard, Greenland. We have just recently launched a new program in Franz Josef Land, the Russian Arctic. We go there in August 2022. Not for the first time. We have been there in the past with Ortelius, traveling via Murmansk, starting from Kirkenes in the north of Norway. But now we can actually go to Franz Josef Land, starting in Longyearbyen and also ending in Longyearbyen with custom clearance in Franz Josef Land, which is very exciting for us because we can save a lot of time along the way and spend the time where we want to be ashore in Franz Josef Land and explore this beautiful archipelago. Now, Svalbard, in May till September, we offer various trips, 7-nighters at the beginning of the season. In June, we head up north to North Spitsbergen to look for polar bears, and we go deep into the ice. We call those trips polar bear, in search of polar bears and pack ice. It's very exciting voyages, 7-nighters. This is as short as it gets. We also have 7-nighters on offer going all the way around Spitsbergen in the summer season, July and August. Then later in September, we travel from and reposition our vessels from Spitsbergen to northeast Greenland into the Scoresby Zone, just circled here on the map. And voyages end after 13 nights in Akureyri in Iceland. So it's the 3-island voyage, so to say. But the focus will then be on Greenland, which is a beautiful destination. We had a separate webinar on Greenland a few weeks ago. You can see it on YouTube. Just Google it, Oceanwide Expeditions webinars, and you find the list of webinars that we have just done within the last few months. Now, Greenland will end in September, and that ends the season for the motor vessels in the Arctic. We still keep on offering programs in North Norway, starting in November, ending in April, in the middle of the Northern Lights period in North Norway in Tromsø. You see the little circle on the map on the right-hand side here on the map. If you want to start with us, that is a very affordable trip. You travel to Tromsø, get straight on the vessel. You do not even need an overnight, and come with us for 7 nights on a Northern Lights trip. Very exciting. Also, when the days get longer, and in January, February, and March, there's good opportunities for hiking. Also, skiing is great. And we have a lot of activities to offer. That is for the Arctic all year round. If you want to come with us, this is where we are at home. This is our patch, north of the Arctic Circle. Now, I'll give you a short introduction for those who do not know about our fleet. You also find that information on our website, www.oceanwide-expeditions.com. And top right-hand side, you see information about our fleet. Here they are in pictures. Now I introduce you to, first of all, our vessel, Rembrandt van Rijn. Here she goes. Rembrandt is the smallest ship in our fleet, 16 cabins, very comfortable cabins with ensuite facilities, shower and toilet, offering space in cabins for 33 passengers in total. We carry 2 Mark V Zodiacs, so we can shuttle people from ship to shore in a very short time. The disembarkation process is very important for us. So we focus on short sea legs and a lot of time on land if possible, because we want to hike, we want to take you around, we want to show you around on exploration days, so you will be fully active with us. So it's not just an ordinary cruise, so we'll keep you active. Now, that is the smallest in our fleet. Plancius is the next ship up. In terms of size, Plancius is a beautiful and great vessel for wildlife observation, because she's very silent in the ice. Moving forward, we are not shy to go deep into the ice, because Plancius has a high ice class, is a very ice-strengthened vessel. We carry 8 to 10 Zodiacs, and we shuttle our passengers from ship to shore also to give them great in-depth experience on land. We have about 108 passenger berths on board, and there will be enough cabins available in different categories, and you can choose from quadruples to twin porthole cabins, windows up to superior on the higher deck. So Plancius offers a lot of open deck space as well. You can walk around and in your free time and explore with us. Ortelius is another vessel in our fleet. She is really custom built for her job. You can see on the aft deck, we carry helicopters, but only in Antarctica. We don't need helicopters in the Arctic. We have 2 helicopters for our Weddell Sea program and the Rossi program when we are on that half circumnavigation of Antarctica. We only carry helicopters where we need them. When we need to overcome ice barriers where boats cannot land anymore, we shuttle our passengers on shore. It's a very exciting boat. You can see this vessel is very sturdy, high ice class 1A. And we are here also not shy to go into the ice and give you very close experience with wildlife and nature impressions. Now, Ortelius also has offers space for around 108 passengers in just over 52 cabins. Now, if you would like to come with us on the newest ships that are on offer here with us, Hondius had been launched in 2019. And she has space for 170 passengers, so that is one size up. But it doesn't really feel like a bigger ship, because people are spreading on board. They are in different lecture rooms. They sit in the lounge at the bar. They are on excursions. They are outside on deck. So there's a lot of open space to move around. Of course, we have more Zodiacs that we carry on this ship. and more staff paying attention to our guests on board. They speak various languages as well. And the same credo we have here on this vessel, there's no difference. We focus on short sea legs in order to spend a lot of time on land. And that is very important for us to bring our people, our guests on shore to deliver what we would like to show them, nature, wildlife, and activities. Now, Jansonius, I mentioned earlier, a sister vessel of Hondius. Jansonius has just been launched a few days ago, in fact, in Croatia. We are very proud that this vessel is now in the final stage of getting ready to be delivered to us. She is exactly the same size, offering space for 170 passengers in very comfortable cabin categories. We have cabin categories on Hondius and Jansonius, which we do not have on Plancius and Ortelius. For instance, junior suites and grand suites, and the grand suites have private balconies. So there is a real luxury flavor on these vessels, and you will enjoy it if you look for this kind of experience on board. Now, this is enough said about our fleet. You see here the overview of our vessels. Jansonius to come with us now in the end of this year. We're looking forward to having her very soon. And as soon as we can restart with our operation as well, we are pausing at the moment due to obvious facts. Now, I would like to hand over to Andreas now. The Arctic program and our Arctic ocean voyage is really an great program. And I hand over to you, Andreas. That's your stage. I'll see you when you're done.
Thanks, Florian. Thanks for the introduction. And once again, good afternoon from my side. I'm going to tell you now a little bit about our North Atlantic crossing over up to Svalbard, basically from the doorstep up to the ice edge, as you could say, describe this trip in a nutshell. And I kind of give this subtitle, A Taste of Adventure. And I hope that during the next 45 minutes, you will get to know why I call this A Taste of Adventure. And just to start with, Florian already said it, during my studies, I ended up on Svalbard, and as it quite often happens, when you go up there, you get caught by the polar buck, and then you get stuck, and that's what happened to me. I stayed there several years. And during that time, I'm originally from southern Germany. I had always had to get up there somehow, so I was taking the flight, and being a student on a cheap budget, so you just buy the cheapest plane ticket you can find, and what you end up with that you have to spend your night over at some airport and no hotel. So you're lying in winter time in the Oslo entrance airport hall and freezing your ass off, as to say. And you pretty much realize very fast that it's actually quite a long distance between southern Germany and Svalbard. It took me in wintertime around 30 hours to get up there, and I had like, wow, that's long. It's much longer than taking a train to the neighbor village, or as it was before Corona, you could just fly somewhere and be there 2 hours later. So I kind of got the impression, it is far away. The Arctic is a difference, and especially if you leave the airplane on Svalbard, you kind of, the snow starts blowing in your face, and you, especially in winter time, you immediately get hit by minus 30 degrees Celsius and complete darkness, and you're like, feeling really like, oh, I'm up, and what did I get myself into? What kind of adventure? But what I never still, even though it was like 30 hours going from 20 degrees plus in Germany in spring to minus 30 on Svalbard and snowstorm, after 30 hours was still not really giving me a feeling of the distance. So I was actually very happy when Oceanwide asked me if I want to join in 2019 for the Hondius inauguration voyage up from the Netherlands, at that time it was, to Svalbard. Because if you just look at the map, we have Germany down here, we have Norway, we have Iceland, the UK, Greenland, and of course Svalbard, and then all this in between, the North Atlantic Ocean, and then somewhere up where the map ends, we have the Arctic Ocean. And you kind of get already a feeling for the distances, and it's quite important if you look at maps like that to mention that if you look at maps, standard maps as we all know them, they are focused on mid-latitudes, so Europe or the US, so those countries are in a proper scale and proper size, and often the northern or the polar areas are somehow too big For example, here you see it on Svalbard. Svalbard is way bigger. It looks almost bigger like Norway, but in reality it's of course smaller. But still, to give you an impression of the size, here's a scale bar down there, 1,500 kilometers. So it is quite a distance, especially if you're not taking the plane. And just to give you a quick overview about the plans for May 2022, where we plan to launch down here in Hamburg, in Bremerhaven, in Germany, for the first time from a German port, which will be quite a nice thing that we can, for the first time with Oceanwide, travel from Germany all the way up into the high Arctic, as to say. So we are starting in Bremerhaven in May next year, hopefully. But of course, that will be on Jansonius. And if you want, you can already join a day earlier in Vlissingen in the Netherlands. Or we also have the option that Honjos will be taking almost the same route, but Honjos will not go over to Bremerhaven, but they will go straight to Scotland, to Aberdeen, offering a short excursion over in Aberdeen that you can get some nice scenery, which we also did in 2019, which is really nice if you like Scottish weather and Scottish castles. And in addition, it also offers the option to actually board the vessel in Aberdeen and to skip the first part up from the Netherlands. But personally, I must say I really enjoy starting on the continental shelf of continental Europe and going over, because it kind of adds to the trip. But anyways, next year we plan to start in Germany, as one of the options. And then we'll be sailing up over the North Sea for 2 days. That's quite a longer period. And then we will reach the Fair Island, which is rather small. And from the Fair Islands, we will spend some time there. And from there, head further north until we reach Jan Mayen, which I will tell you a lot more about later. But it takes about 2 days sailing to get there, almost 2.5. And as you see in the map, if you would not be told that it is there, you wouldn't know it's there. It's pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And that's also a reason it's a super tiny place, and there's almost nothing there. It's super exciting, but almost nobody ever goes there because it's in the middle of nowhere. So it's a really exciting trip for me, at least, because we're actually going to Jan Mayen, which is an active volcano full of glaciers. So it's a bit of geological pornography, if you want to say it like that. And from Jan Mayen, we take a very strange circling route along kind of with some distance to the Greenlandic coast until we reach Svalbard. And that is due because we will be sailing along the ice edge. There will be sea ice at this time of the year, so we will just follow the sea ice edge as long as we can, cross on the western side of the Fram Strait until we then finally cross the Fram Strait up with the entrance of the Arctic Ocean and reach Svalbard. And in Longyearbyen, Svalbard, we will end our voyage and our little adventure. So it's kind of a very nice build-up from very continental setting with almost you feel like a luxury cruise, and all of a sudden you end up in the complete wilderness of the ice edge and end up in the very high Arctic. And in the end, after 10 days, you will have traveled roughly 2,200 nautical miles, which is about 4,000 kilometers. So it's a rather long stretch. And then you, for the first time, at least that's how I felt, you get a real feeling and an idea about the distance. So Svalbard and the Arctic, it's kind of next door, but it's kind of also not next door. It's actually quite far away from us and also quite different in many ways. But let's just start our little adventure. And as I said, we will be starting easy and relaxed. There's a picture from 2019 from Vlissingen in the Netherlands, taken by my colleague Sarah, who is a pretty amazing photographer. So I had to draw back on her for some very nice pictures, as you will especially see later on, because she's an amazing wildlife photographer. But either you start in Vlissingen or Bremerhaven or Aberdeen, wherever you decide to join us on your journey, you will get a very easy start because you will just walk up this gangway. You will just dry dock and you walk up, super easy, and we will carry up your luggage for you. So it will feel almost like boarding a train. So nothing special in a way, but super nice. And once you're on board, you will learn all about the ship routines and the safety on board and how we do our operations and what we do to keep you safe. Because it's quite important. And especially on our other voyages, and as we have expedition character and go to very crazy places, we like to test our guests immediately after leaving port, which is a typical thing that happens often when we go to either Greenland in autumn or to Antarctica, having to cross the Drake. And you just have our passengers just have the time to settle in their cabins, and then all of a sudden the ship starts rolling, which is always a big hardship for many in the very start of a trip. But not this trip, which is quite funny if you compare it. We're crossing the North Sea, and end May, early June, the storm season is just over or not there yet. So it's rather smooth seas. And when we sailed up there in 2019, we had not a single day. We basically had not that flat oceans for 10 days, which was pretty impressive, I must say. So it's very nice that you can actually start a trip rather easy, having a more luxurious cruise feeling for the first 2 days, just sitting on a ship and enjoying the nice food, which is, by the way, far too nice. So it actually gets dangerous, that the amount of incredible nice food you get offered sitting on a ship. And what will you do on the ship? Well, there's quite a lot of stuff. There will be people like me that have a very high interest in the polar regions and that have one main goal or two goals. One is that you want to educate you and kind of not only bring you to a place and show you a place, because that's lacking a component, but you want to also educate you, that you go home and not only take home the experience, but that you also take home knowledge about the places you've just seen, and that you can better understand what you have actually experienced and witnessed. And the other thing is that unfortunately, all of us we try to infect you with the polar bug. Now in Corona times, it's a little tricky to say that we want to infect you, but for those that have already traveled in the polar regions, you know what I mean. Once you have been there, it is very contagious and you can't really get the polar regions out of your life anymore. And one of the stories that we will actually tell you in those lectures that we will be giving you to educate and engage you in the polar regions will be also about Doggerland, which is the area we are crossing to in the first 2 days while we cross over to Fair Island. And Doggerland, that was once about 16,000 years ago that we had the Ice Age, and all of Scandinavia was pretty much covered in ice. Part of England was covered in ice. And at that time, nowadays, England tries to isolate itself a little bit from Europe. At that time, it was actually part of continental Europe. So there was land between continental Europe and England, everything that is here in light green, as all the seawater was stored as part of land ice. And then the ice edge ended and ice started melting, and then this thing slowly became submerged and started being flooded. And then about 8,000 years ago, west of Norway in the continental shelf, you see it here on the right side, we have very deep water. It's about this deep blue here in the color, it's about 3,000 meters or so deep. And then we have the continental shelf in this lighter blue, and then we had a landslide going there from a few hundred meter depths to a few thousand meter depths. And that caused a massive tsunami about 9 meters high that flooded larger areas of Doggerland. And in the end, we had all the sea level rise from melting glaciers. So slowly Doggerland became completely submerged. And there were Stone Age men living over there in that times, but they all had to leave their places, which is nowadays kind of giving us an indication what we might see in the next decades and centuries with the current ice melt we have going on. But there's a lot of archaeologists that still basically dig under the waves and find a lot of archaeological treasures. So that's one of the stories that we will tell you while we'll be sailing along for the first 2 days. Then after 2 days, we will finally reach our first destination, Fair Island. Now we kind of start to get our first taste of adventure as we reach our first landing spot, and you can finally stretch your legs again. Fair Island is a pretty tiny island, and you see it here in a satellite image. It has a landing stripe, probably a gravel runway. I haven't even checked if it's how difficult it is to get there as a normal tourist by flying in. It's possible, but might not be the easiest, but I haven't checked. But what else is there on Fair Island? Well, there's a road kind of going here southwest, connecting two lighthouses, which are on either end. And then we have a little road going up in the highlands, and there's a couple of houses, and that's about it. And then we have the harbor, and of course, a lot of cliffs. So Fair Island will be the first time that you as a passenger get the taste of what we are actually doing, because you have been stepping on the ship via dry dock, which was super easy. But now there's no dry dock. And from now on, there won't be any more until we reach Longyearbyen, which is a proper harbor. But all our other stops will be wet landings, as we call them. So we need to use our Zodiac boat. So you have to either board the gangway, or with our new vessels, you have also very nice shell doors. If sea state is low, we can use those, and that's very fast. But with those boats, we will drive you safely ashore And once onshore, it's in the picture here, you basically land on the beach. It's a little bit of Pirate of the Caribbean feeling when you land straight on the beach and get off the boat. Very different from what you might have experienced so far if you have not been traveling with us before. And the other thing with Fair Island, it's very nice as an easy first landing because you can just do whatever you like on Fair Island. You have a couple of hours so you can roam around on your own and really explore this place to your liking. And this will be quite different at later landings because as soon as we reach the Arctic, we are in polar bear territory. And unfortunately, due to safety reasons, we can't let you roam around anymore. And then once we're in the Arctic, you actually have to follow us guides because we will carry weapons, rifles with us, and we will do offered guided hikes so that we are not getting endangered of encountering a polar bear. That's the idea behind it. That's also why we're slowly building up this adventure. At the start, you're still able to explore on your own, and then later on, you have a more of a guided exploration as we reach the Arctic. But in Fair Island, what will you see? You will basically meet this very nice green landscape, rolling cliffs, and you will, of course, meet the local population. I looked up the statistics in 2011. Fair Island had 68 inhabitants. I didn't find statistics for sheep, but I'm pretty sure they have more sheep than inhabitants on this island. And that's also one of their main industries. They actually, as it reads online, knitted sweaters are a main industry of Fair Island. So that's also something that we will get to see. And also if you're interested and you get to purchase, of course, they will open the town hall for us. And in the town hall, all the local manufacturers and artists will exhibit their products and also sell their products. But not only that, they will also offer us free cake and free warm tea and coffee, which is absolutely amazing, I can tell you that. Because when we landed there in 2019, it was a typical Scottish weather, as you could say. It was just pouring down like hell. So by the time I reached town hall, I was completely soaked and wet down to my underwear, literally. So I was super happy to actually have the chance to go inside and warm myself up, dry my clothes a little bit and get a cup of warm tea. What surprised me myself, and you will learn that in the rest of the talk as well, I'm an ice person. I really get quite excited about ice. I'm not so enthusiastic about birds. I still like watching them, but we really have bird enthusiasts on our voyages all the time, quite often, more regularly. And they can get very excited. They tend to stay up all night, every day for the whole trip to watch the birds outside. I don't know how they manage with only 2 hours sleep a night, but that's for sure. If you are up for birds, you will see a lot. And I mention it here because in Fair Island, when I was soaking wet and happy to go inside and get a cup of coffee, I got this whole bunch of guests running towards me, out, barely wrapping their jacket and trying to throw over their jacket with their tripods and cameras and running like hell as if they wanted to win a 100-meter sprint. And then they were shouting, "Roskal, Roskal, Roskal," because that's the first time that they encountered, or from what I understood from them, the first time that anybody encountered a Roskal in Northern Europe. So that was a very exciting and spectacular sight for them. I must admit, I didn't follow. I rather got in and got something warm. And something, of course, going back to the birds, it's not only the chance of maybe finding a Roskal, but it's also something else that gets people quite excited and getting their expensive camera gear out in completely crazy rainfall. It's the local bird life. We have fulmars that are there that can be encountered, but especially, and here comes the amazing photographic skills from Sarah in, we have puffins. And the puffins are not shy at all. So it's actually possible to get really, really close and get absolutely nice and incredible footage. And of course, might even be nicer if you're there on a day when it's not rainy. But even if you have downpour, it's still possible to make the best out of it and get some really, really nice pictures there. So probably, I mean, sometimes I get passengers that want to take puffin pictures on Svalbard, but unfortunately there are not very many puffins that are nesting on Svalbard. It's only a couple of pairs. But if you really want to get close to puffins, Fair Island is the place you should go, because that's pretty impressive. And what I personally do recommend after 2 days at sea, I recommend stretching your legs. That's also something I did. Just walk the island along its complete length, just follow the street or the gravel way, and visit the 2 lighthouses on either end. That's the one on the northern end, which is I would say, pretty nice and spectacular site, which offers some really beautiful landscape and cliff scenery, also in a very cloudy and rainy day. But once you had enough tea, woolen sweaters, roscals, puffins, and beautiful landscapes and stretched your legs, we will start boarding again and continue our voyage north, because there's still a lot more excitement to come by. And as we travel north, of course, also the further north we get, kind of the more wildlife we tend to encounter. So we do, and especially for those that are out on deck all the time, that's also why our bird enthusiasts get to see most wildlife, we do actually see quite a few. Quite often it unfortunately happens that they just pop up and they disappear again, but sometimes you also have, like in this case, the pilot whales that actually follow our vessel and accompany our vessel for a while. So that's something very nice to see. And that's also a reason why on these voyages we have whale experts on the ship. And those whale experts are pretty much like the bird experts out on the boat, on the vessel all the time. I don't know when those guys ever sleep, but they, first of all, they count the whales, and also for scientific reasons. But then on both Jansonius and Hondius, we also offer workshops. Or they offer workshops, not me. So what they offer is that they offer you acoustic workshops. So they tell you and teach you about sounds that whales make and the seals make, dolphins make. So you're able to learn how to recognize them. And we also have special microphones on the vessel, so we can actually also do our own recordings. And our experts in these workshops are able to really tell you a lot and get you quite close and familiar with our marine wildlife that we encounter. And of course, after 1.5 days or so after leaving Fair Island, all of a sudden a big bump goes through the ship as we hit the Arctic Circle. Of course, it doesn't feel like that, because the Arctic Circle is just an imaginary line made up by humans. But we will cross the Arctic Circle a little bit north of Iceland. So we will hit 66 degrees north. So it's worth up being on the bridge for getting that one picture shot that you actually crossed the Arctic Circle, which is quite nice to do it on a ship and not on a plane. Feels different. And then after 2.5 days, we will finally reach a very spectacular but also tiny and remote place, which is called Mayen. That's a strange-looking elongated island, which is a volcano. It's an active volcano. You see a volcano here, which stretches over 2,200 meters high, straight from sea level, which is what excites me, full of glaciers. The whole crater is full of glaciers. And also something very special, it's part of Norway. So Norway has this tiny island in the middle of Norway. And there's also a research station, which we hope to visit if conditions allow. And normally we have the chance to land down here on the southern side or on the northern side. And what we like to do, if conditions allow, we like to land on the southern side and offer hikes to the research station, but also on the other side of the island, where we then can offer a pickup in the afternoon and have a guided hike across the island. So we plan to spend about a full day here. And Jan Mayen is really, really, really a special place. And I have a friend who was working on a PhD about fog and how fog influences the glaciers on Jan Mayen. And that should already tell you something, because there's a lot of fog. So most of the time of the year, the island is just buried in fog. And if you look at satellite images, it's very hard to actually find that one clear image when Jan Mayen is not in the fog. So for anybody trying to go there or wanting to go there, I can only recommend be up as early as possible. I think I was up at 5 o'clock on this picture. And as Bärenberg, that's the name of the mountain, the volcano, is more than 2,000 meters high, you always see it from a very long distance. So I got this very nice shot in the early morning sunrise over Bärenberg. And you never know. You might be up in the early morning and the island might be covered in fog, or it might be like we had in 2019, you have the perfect weather early in the morning. So it's definitely, once you know, we will be reaching Jan Mayen and we will inform you on the ship when we will probably expect to see it. Be up and use your time. That's a complete rare and unique sight. And it's absolutely spectacular to just see this massive volcano growing in front of your eyes as you get closer and closer. And this massive volcano was also what people remembered about it. And it's not quite sure when Jan Mayen has exactly been discovered. Might already have been discovered around the year 900, but official reports are here from the year 1614 from Dutch whalers. And you also have all these pictures about this very characteristic mountain in the middle of the nowhere in the ocean. And early on, it was used by Dutch whalers as a base to hunt right whales. That's also where the name Jan Mayen comes from a Dutch whaling vessel captain who was named Jan Mayen. Later on, there was also an Austrian-Hungarian research station. And then something very, I'm still impressed by this, very funny happened, and something that is probably unique in the whole globe. I haven't heard any other story like that. Jan Mayen was occupied and taken over by Norway, but not by the Norwegian government, not by the Norwegian military, but by the Norwegian meteorologists. So those guys studying the weather. They just went there, put up a weather station and put up a sign saying, now this belongs to Norway. This is part of the Norwegian kingdom. And then they wrote the government in Oslo saying, now your Jan Mayen belongs to us. So since that happened in 1922, so since then we have Jan Mayen as a part of Norway, and this is actually now Norwegian administrated, which is an interesting thing. So that's also why Norway all of a sudden has an active volcano on its territory in the middle of nowhere. We had a quite big eruption in 1970. You see all the ash coming out here of the main crater. And then there was another eruption in a side flank of the crater of the volcano in 1985. That's a picture from the Norwegian Polar Institute. There's quite a bit of research interest in geoscience about what's actually going on in this place. But the problem is with this place that you can almost not get there. I have a couple of colleagues that work in that area and try to work in that area, and almost none of them manage to ever go there in person because it's so hard. There is a research station, and the crew of the research station has normally a handover, have a contract for about 6 months, and then they have a handover and the next crew comes in. That means normally we have about 2 planes landing here per year. That is military airplanes that land on a gravel runway. They start in Bodø in northern Norway. And most of the time, the plane has to turn around and try a couple of days or weeks later because it's too much fog and too bad weather conditions to land there. And as a normal person, you're not allowed to board that plane. You're either a military person or from the crew of the station or a researcher with a super, super special permission. Then you might board that plane, otherwise no chance. There's also every now and then a research supply vessel going up there to supply the station with cargo and food and so on. But also that is very hard to get, and then you have maybe twice a year. And then in addition to that, there's a few vessels like us that go there once a year. And not all of them manage to actually land. So getting to Jan Mayen is something very, very unique and quite spectacular. So I'm super happy that I actually managed to go there. It's a very rare thing. But as I said, there's a research station on Jan Mayen from the Meteorological Institute, which is occupied all year round. There was an accident about 2 months ago that 2 persons from that station actually died in an avalanche, quite tragic. And there's also already since a couple of years some plans to remove the personnel from that station and make it completely automatic. But in addition, there's also a military station because that's leftover from the Cold War, as to say. As we have a radar that is operated on Jan Mayen, so we have military personnel being stationed there all year round. Here we go. And what happened to us in 2019 is that the swell on the southern side, so the waves on the beach were just too high, so we couldn't land there. It's a quite common thing if you are working in expedition or going on an expedition that the weather is not always as you like it. So quite often you have to change and make plan A, B, C, D, and so on. So we have to reschedule. And in this case, we decided, okay, we can't land on the south side. Let's go straight around the island immediately and try it on the north side, which gave us some very nice and spectacular views of the glacier and of the volcano and the glaciers and the cliffs. But you already see it a little bit here. It starts getting foggy. You remember the first pictures I showed you, everything nice and clear and sunrise in the morning and brilliant. And now we start getting fog. And by the time, about 2 hours later, we come out the other side, we could see only 100 meters and everything was gone in the fog. We still tried to land and drove our Zodiacs all the way through the fog without really seeing where we are. And once we managed to land, about 15 minutes later, the fog cleared. And all of a sudden we could see the ship again. So Jan Mayen has really the thing about fog going in and out and super fast changing conditions. That's why I say it's super important to be out all the time and really make the best out of it. And we are normally getting greeted by the chief of the military station. So the chief commander will come over and he might even be happy to join us for a meal on the ship to get some fresh vegetables. They don't get that very often, obviously. And what we do offer here is hikes, but also we can explore the beaches on private. And you already see it's quite a spectacular landscape. It's these dark beaches. It's volcanic ash basically forming these beaches. And you have these strange black cliffs that is lava that has been cooled down and is now just forming these massive rock cliffs. So it's a bit of a out-of-the-world scenery that not only offers amazing geology and glaciology and vegetation, but it also offers a lot of history. There's graves, there's historical remains that one can explore. And we have quite a bit of wildlife. We have little auks that are nesting in the cliffs at this time of the year. So it's quite nice opportunity to get around and explore. And for our big world explorers, you can actually go and get a stamp in your passport that you have been to Jan Mayen if you want to impress or get a very strange face. And the next time you pass border control, when they look at your stamps in your passport, I did that myself. It's a quite nice opportunity. And you will get that from the military station commander. But yeah, so we spent as much time as we can on shore, if we get on shore, but fingers crossed it will work out. And once we're done with that, and fingers crossed the fog will be lifted enough that we can still see something, we will keep sailing around and explore Bärenberg with the ship a bit more. It's not possible to land on that side because it's just cliffs and glaciers. As I said, it has a lot of glaciers, about 30% or 117 square kilometers are ice on Jan Mayen, and it's 21 single glaciers, so that's the biggest one, Weitbrechtbren. And you don't see it in the picture. That one goes all the way from the crater down to the ocean. So you need to imagine in this picture that it goes another 2,000 meters up, but you don't see it as fog. And as I said, it's that's the tricky nature of Jan Mayen, that the fog comes and goes, and you have to catch the moment. But it's still quite, I think, as I said, ice is my thing. I think a quite spectacular sight to see these very visited glaciers. And once we're done exploring here, we will keep sailing north, leave Jan Mayen behind us in the fog, and see what lies ahead of us. And something that lies not behind us in the fog, but below our feet as we cross the ocean is a map. Here is Jan Mayen down here in the corner, and we cross up north. And at some point, we will pass by this point. And it's a funny point. What you see here is maps and 3D maps of what is beneath the waves in the ocean. And that is an underwater volcano, an active volcano. And that volcano, you see it here's a depth scale. The green stuff, it's more than 3,000 meters deep. And the red stuff is only 150 meters deep. So we have a more than 3,000 meter high volcano below our feet or as we cross over. And it's an interesting sight because it's still active and it causes a lot of nutrients that get upwelled. And where there are nutrients in the water, there will be wildlife. So there's a good chance in that area to see the whales. And normally there are quite a few around. And another thing that is very special here, we are crossing into we approach the Arctic Ocean. You see the Arctic Ocean, this map up here, Greenland, Svalbard, Iceland. And it's kind of a 3D map showing you what is beneath the waves, kind of the landform. And you see that the Arctic Ocean is kind of a deep ocean basin, 3,000 to 4,000 meters deep, but it doesn't have a deep outflow towards Alaska, but only a deep outflow towards Greenland, Iceland. So the in and outflow of the Arctic Ocean, connecting the Arctic Ocean with the rest of the world oceans, is between Svalbard and Greenland. And that's quite important if you look at this little animation here, where we see Greenland, we see the Canadian Arctic, we see Alaska, we see Svalbard over here, Norway. And this animation is from NASA, so the American Space Agency, and they have satellites in space since 1984 that observe the Arctic sea ice and can map the changes year round. And what you see in this animation is how the sea ice is growing every winter and how the sea ice is melting every summer and getting smaller. You see in very light gray, you see all the areas that only form in winter and then they melt again in summer. And you see in this very white color, that's the old sea ice. So that's sea ice that is older than 4 years. You also see kind of this color scale up here in the right corner. And you also see how the area of the old sea ice changes. So something that's happening in the Arctic Ocean is that the old sea ice is disappearing. You only get young sea ice, so sea ice that forms in winter and melts and disappears again in summer. And something else that if you watch this old ice as it's moving, you see it kind of has a movement. There's a kind of a counterclockwise circulation in the Arctic Ocean, and that circulation transports the ice from the north coast of Canada and Alaska via the north coast of Greenland and down along the east coast, along this outflow is just showing you on the bathymetric map, as it's called. So we have all the ice, or the old ice that is draining along the east coast of Greenland. And if you look at Svalbard, the north of Svalbard, the old ice does not reach the north of Svalbard. North of Svalbard, you have already the 1-year-old ice, whereas along the east coast of Greenland in the early spring, you have the old ice. So the only place to really still meet the old ice is early spring, Greenland, or the east coast of Greenland. That's the only place if you want to see really old ice. And if you just watch the animation until the end, you see the old ice is really, really, really disappearing. And it's disappearing very fast, especially now in the very end. Now we're in 2017. So there's almost no old sea ice left. And the little bit that is left is all draining out along the east coast of Greenland. That's September 2019. And just for completeness, I show you another picture from last September in 2020. I just need to get the slide to. No, that's not supposed to restart. Here we go. Here's another picture from last September. In yellow, you see the minimum average of the last 30 years. That was in September when we have most ice is melted. You see it's still close to Svalbard in September normally, but last summer was a pretty bad summer, very warm, like 15 degrees still in August in Svalbard. And you see all the ice is gone. There's almost nothing left. And here's an ice chart from last week. So the maximum extent as it should be. And you see all the red stuff, all the colorful stuff, that's sea ice. But last week, you could have taken the vessel and sailed to 82 degrees north without encountering any ice at all. So unfortunately, the chances of meeting sea ice on Svalbard, especially north of Svalbard, are decreasing every year. There's even scientists saying that we might see ice-free summers in already 10 years. So that in the Arctic, that would be quite catastrophic. Let's hope they are wrong. But there will still, for quite a long time, be ice along the east coast of Greenland in spring because it will be draining out. So if you're looking for a trip where you get sea ice guaranteed, there's only one. That's this one. All the other trips in the future, who knows? But the scientific reality that we face is sea ice guaranteed this trip. All the others, maybe. Maybe we take the North Pole in 5 years with Plancius or Hondius. But what is really spectacular once, and that's what the first sea ice we hit 2 years ago, we got this first flows, and you see it's very thick ice, and thick ice is also nice for animals so they can rest. And we found this very thick ice of harp seals. And you see it kind of in the background, there's fog, but there were hundreds. I don't know how many, at least 300, probably far more, were hidden by in the fog, and it's an absolutely stunning sight. And as we have an incredibly silent vessel, which is always impressing me, that we get very close to those seals. We have this big ship, those tiny seals, and the ship can basically park next to them and they're not responding. They're only looking up and maybe getting scared once they hear all the clicking noises of the shutters of the cameras. That's the time when they get to react. I don't know how they survive the polar bears. Good for the bears. And of course, sea ice is just a very, very spectacular sight. If you have never seen sea ice or never been to a place where you have anything like that, it will pretty much, in my opinion, blow your mind, because there is nothing to compare it with being somewhere in the middle of nowhere and 360 degrees, you only see ice. You might, if you pay attention, see something like this, polar bear tracks, which are a little bit older. So you want to be out about on deck and really have your eyes peeled and watch for what might be hidden in the fog. The weather is changing a lot and very fast. You have fog one moment and then clear sunshine the next. And of course, you also see a lot of wildlife. There's always birds like the kittiwakes that surround the vessel and that are up on the ice. If you are into birds, there's good chances when we hit sea ice to see ivory gulls. You might even catch a fight between ivory gulls and kittiwakes, which is quite funny if they start fighting who gets the food. And what is really nice is that we, with the weather is really changing, but with Jansonius and Hondius, we can get quite deep into the ice. And especially now as we have the thicker ice, it's quite important. So we can safely navigate deep into these areas of sea ice. And that allows us just to be completely immersed in this environment, surrounded by the ice, and really see what wildlife might be there. Here we have a hooded seal, which we encountered in 2019. And if you get your eyes peeled long enough and convince the captain to follow this very tiny, tiny, tiny yellow dot in 5 kilometer distance, and you're lucky, you might even see the king of the Arctic. We were lucky and found one in 2019, the polar bear, that is also exploring the ice. And might be even very curious because there's almost never a vessel in that area. So it's super rare that those bears that are in that area encounter a vessel at this time of the year, which is very nice. And something absolutely super spectacular happened to us in 2019 that we all have not experienced in that form before. We had this encounter in the sea ice, pretty high north, of this very strange black thing that looked like a Russian stealth submarine from the Cold War times, but it's not. That's a white whale or Greenlandic whale. That's the whales that were almost hunted to extinction in the whaling period in the 16th, 17th century. So they were almost not seen for hundreds of years. And most of our old surf expedition guides that have been in industry for 20, 30 years, they were like blown by what we saw in 2019, that we all of a sudden saw the white whales and we could actually get very close. So that was a very unique, but also very motivating sight to finally see those animals coming back and we encountering their wildlife areas, their natural area. And then after 2 to 3 days, depending on the wildlife we meet, depending on the ice we see, we finally start reaching Svalbard. We'll still be sailing along the ice edge and just notice a change in the picture that we saw before. All the massive thick ice, and now we see all this tiny thin ice. So it's really, you see the difference between multi-year ice that you can only encounter now on the east coast of Greenland in early spring, whereas the 1-year ice that you can encounter north of Svalbard. But we will still try to use Hondius or Jansonius as much as we can, the ice classes that we have, to really go deep into the ice that might be there, hopefully will be there, and get another couple of spectacular scenes. And it's just atmospheric. The mood is just incredible. And we will work our way through this ice pretty much as long until we can finally see Svalbard in the distance, which will be also quite a unique sight because we will try to approach Svalbard from the northwest side. And that's the area where the first time Svalbard was discovered in 1596 by Wilhelm Barents. And in Dutch, Svalbard was called Spitzbergen. The same in German, it's called Spitzbergen. And that means peaky mountains because they saw all these peaky mountains in the distance. That was the first name they could come up for this land they discovered. And on Svalbard, scenery will change a bit. You will finally see land again. You will see different wildlife. You might encounter some winged seals, which are polar bear fast food. And what we also do hope to see is the walruses, which is also quite a positive thing because they have also been hunted to nearly extinction in whaling periods. But nowadays, the numbers are increasing a lot on Svalbard. So it's many hollow places. And in early spring, we might see them on the sea ice hanging out there. And if they're not on the sea ice, we have some places we could step on land to get closer to and get a good look at those guys. Of course, there's also other wildlife. Who knows, there might be another polar bear. We have been quite lucky in the last years and often encountered blue whales in the area around Svalbard, especially fjord entrances. There's never a guarantee, but there are chances. There's the Arctic terns that nest on Svalbard in summer. We will for sure see those. We have polar foxes that scavenge around between the bird colonies, in this case the little auks. So we really hope to take you ashore once we reach Svalbard. And now comes also where my heart really beats. Once we reach Svalbard, we finally get to see glaciers again. We haven't seen glaciers for 2 to 3 days. We only saw sea ice. So it's very nice to spend really 5 days or so in a row just looking at ice and more ice. So what we really want to do, and that is why Svalbard is unique with some 59% ice coverage of the whole land area. It has a lot of glaciers. So you will see and get to see some really nice and spectacular sights of beautiful glaciers carving into the ocean. And what we really hope to do with you, that we either take you close with a ship or with a Zodiac, or we take you on a hike where you get a nice viewpoint and look down on a glacier, so you can also get some very nice shot. And you can't visit Svalbard without having seen or visited a glacier. That's not possible. And once we are done there, we will actually eventually reach Longyearbyen. So our adventure will finally end in Longyearbyen. You will get back to civilization, as you could call it, after you've maybe stepped ashore already somewhere north of Svalbard and you were guarded with us with rifles for eventual polar bears that we might see. But now we reach Svalbard, and you will not need a Zodiac anymore. You won't need rubber boots, but you normally use. You can just step dry ashore and take your luggage and step off. And the question is, of course, always, where do you step off to? Do you step off to go home, or do you step off to go on to another adventure? Because in history, and also still nowadays, Longyearbyen, and that's also what it was always for me, it's only the start of an adventure. It's only the starting point and never the end. So the question is, of course, what will you do from Longyearbyen, and where will your adventure take you next? And with that, I want to end. I really want to thank you for your attention. And now I hand over to Florian again.
Hey, Andreas, thanks ever so much for this presentation. Really impressive pictures you have shown us here, and very informative and lively presentation. Thanks ever so much for that. It's a very exciting program indeed. It has great opportunities for wildlife and nature impressions along the way. Spectacular, really. We look forward to it in 2022. May is the start. You find our trips on our website. I've sent you a link in the chat area here, but you will also receive follow-up email with the recording of the lecture that will be emailed to you and to all participants later, possibly tomorrow or the day after. Our advice is focus on 2022 when you do your planning with us. Our program for 2022 had been revised and fine-tuned. You find all the details on our website, or just contact us in the reservation department. There are new trips, for instance, the Franz Josef Land voyage, and many activities that can be booked with us. Either they're free of charge when you book the base camp voyages with us, or they are subject to a surcharge depending on the type of program that you choose. Now, we offer photo workshops, navigation workshops, and Andreas has also mentioned the engaging audio workshop, listening to the sounds of whales and seals. That is really a great experience when you come with us on that North Atlantic voyage, the Arctic Ocean Expedition. Of course, once we are hitting land, we offer hiking, we offer diving, supplemented for the experts who bring their own gear, kayaking on a regular program, and also newly launched is an advanced kayak program for those who want to progress on skills and learn how to maneuver single-seat kayaks. That is something that we do on the Hondius in East Greenland and also on Rembrandt van Rijn in North Norway. Just watch out, contact us, find your way, and get some directions from us if you get lost here. All our activities are, of course, needless to say, under the supervision of expert guides on board. Now, big thanks again to you, Andreas, and also to you, our audience across Europe today, for being here today. Thanks ever so much. Stay healthy. See you next time, and bye for now.